Welcome to Twin Cities Real Estate Show. I'm Kirk Duckwall. Joining me is Chad Vandelogt, and we are the House Geeks. Also with us is Charles Daly from iLoan, and my brother's back in studio after our hiatus of a few years. And he is with Bricks Real Estate. Make sure you give us a call with any of your questions at 612-207-5388. Again, 612-207-5388. We're always here to help answer those. And check us out online anytime at housegeeks.com. Again, that's housegeeks.com. So what we're going to be talking about today is the seller's market that we're in and the seller's market that we've been in since November of last year. It has really taken off, and we are seeing inventory at historically low points. It's been almost a decade since we've seen housing inventory as low as it's been, and that is really driving the market that's out there. A lot of people, they think of the spring market and they think, I want to put on my house by April or May to take advantage of that spring market. And I remember, Adam, you and I used to talk about this all the time, was it doesn't start then. It starts really normally in January, but this year in November. And you really want to pay attention to what the market is doing to try to time out that best time to list. Now, I know personally, Adam, I've listed homes in the last a couple months, and I've had 7 houses that have sold all in a couple weeks or less. What has your experience been out there so far this year?
Well, I think when an agent is listing a property or seller's listing a property within striking distance of the actual market value, it's selling very quickly. A matter of days, many times. I think our average at our brokerage right now is about 30 days on market, which is pretty good.
Yeah, we're about, 41 days under average time on market for the Twin Cities. I think Twin Cities right now, the average time on market for the Twin Cities, 88 days. But, I want to get into that in a little bit, talking about how, in a market like we're in right now, anybody can sell a house. Honestly, anybody can sell a house with inventory as low as it is, but it's achieving that maximum sale price and also getting it to sell in the fastest time on market. Talking about the brokerage stats, I know that I think one of the other things we were discussing the other week was our listings selling like 2.9% more than the average sale price, which, for somebody who's selling in that $200,000 range, you're looking at, close to $6,000 more in your pocket. So it's not just about selling a house in this market. It's selling it at max price. I mean, Chad, you're out there all the time on showings. I mean, what did you wrote 3 offers last night, I think you said?
Yep, 3 offers last night.
And how many of those were either in multiples or going into multiples?
The 2 that were not a short sale were in multiple offers.
Yeah, the market is just crazy out there right now. And I know when we get into the next segment, we're going to be discussing what the ways you want to handle those multiple offers.
Right.
But
well, you alluded to a very good point there, Kirk. Talking about how properties are selling quickly and anyone can sell a property quickly. That gets thrown around way too often. Agents are always talking about how, I sold my house or I sold my listings in this many days. The thing that is overlooked by so many is, what could it have sold for if it was marketed appropriately? And let me just give you a really quick example here. If you were to bring in one more buyer into the mix because of good marketing strategies, that buyer could write an offer that could, let's just say it's a terrible offer, completely awful, nothing that the seller would want to even touch with.
Doesn't matter.
The fact that it is there now gives you the ability to bring that into the sphere, and another offer which may have been mediocre to bad may become a over list price offer.
You brought in a bait offer. You use it as bait to bring the other offers up.
Right, and it's a legitimate, bona fide offer in hand, and that is extraordinarily valuable. And when you go back to, well, how do you construct that? that goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is the preparation of getting a property ready to go takes months. And that's what a good listing agent is doing. They're not just coming out, shooting a set of photos. Yes, the photos make a huge difference in the emotional response, but how is that constructed, and what is all the work, the effort, the preparation? And then, of course, having that top-notch photography does make a huge difference. And then presenting it right and getting it in front of the right people is critical, too.
Adam, you say that takes months. About how many? Just shoot from the hip.
Well, I would say 1 to 3.
1 to 3. Okay, so call it 2.5. And usually what I see with the application rate for pre-approval when people are actually coming off the market, getting very serious as buyers, there seems to be a very big uptick of that activity in mid-January, probably when they're getting over their hangover from New Year's. And then bang, right after that, there is just a whole host of activity that had been suppressed in December. So if you want to capitalize on that early activity in late January, early February, realistically, they need to be preparing that house in
November,
October.
Somewhere in that range. Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas most people are thinking, oh, well, I'm going to sell my house next spring, and they're thinking in the calendar year that they want to begin in January, February. No, actually, it's fall. You prepare in fall.
Yep. I think if you're thinking about selling your house at all, you should be contacting your agent, figuring out, what is the peak timing and what is it going to take to get it ready. Even if it's a year out, even if it's 2 years out, the more preparation time you have, the more deliberate you can be in your choices.
I had somebody the other day that just submitted automated valuation request on our website, the House Geeks, and I just asked real quickly, what's your time frame to sell? Because the time of year you put it on the market may make a difference. And they're like, oh, we're looking to list in the next 30 days. And I just stopped right there and said, hey, we need to get an appointment set up to go over there and really get your house ready. If you're that close to listing, and maybe they don't think that that's that close, that they only need to do that a week ahead of time. But, figuring out how are we going to stage this property? I mean, that was one of the things since we were on air last that I have made a big push for. I mean, actually acquired a staging company to utilize for that purpose, to get somebody in the door, to give that professional eye, to tweak the things for the photographer to make it look as good as it possibly can. Because, staging isn't necessarily so much for the buyer that's walking through. It's to get the buyer hooked that's online looking.
Yep. I think staging serves the purpose of making somebody emotionally attached to the property when they're looking online. Absolutely, it's giving perspective as well to those photos. You take an empty room. A lot of times you'll see that in new construction, but you'll see it in existing construction too. Empty room. If you shoot that, you have no idea how big that room is, and everything appears small. So you need perspective. I guess maybe you should use miniature furniture. That would look awesome.
But anyway, dollhouse furniture.
Yeah, there you go.
Go over to Toys R Us.
There you go. So you're giving perspective, and then you're also, honestly, you're distracting the eye from imperfections. When that buyer is there, if you have that empty room, our eyes are going to go and look all over, find those little cracks in the wall. You'll see the settling in that door jamb, from the 1920s house. And if you have furniture there, those things don't pop out. And it's not that house is any different from the one that's next to it or the one that's next to it on the other side, but it will appear to have more deficiencies if it's an empty, vacant property. So I run into people all the time that don't want to do staging. And honestly, there's almost never a good reason to not have a property staged. Almost never.
I heard a really funny one the other day, and she recognized the fact that it was a fault of her own, that she's like, I don't know if it's the green walls or what it is with this house, but I just really don't want to set up a showing. And I know that shouldn't bother me, but it does, and I mean, Chad, have you had, or Adam, any experiences, just recently with first-time home buyers where they're just noticing things that are easy fixes out there?
Oh, absolutely. And a good point to touch on right now is I think the first showing actually happens online now. So
I'd say the first 5 showings by the same buyer because they keep coming back. But you're absolutely right.
That's a great point.
Well, what was it? I think it was a Cat last night. She sends out this request wanting to set up a showing, and she probably looked at it 2 or 3 more times And how did she respond to you, Chad?
And then after she had some time to look at the pictures over and over and over again, she decided not to waste her time by seeing that house because through the pictures, she knew it wasn't the one for her. So she'd rather focus her time to find that one that really stands out and go out and capture that one before somebody else does.
That's a fantastic point. Fantastic point. So really, and I completely agree with that. Really, you've got to take your listing and think of that as your showings.
So, I think the one of the big keys that to express to people that are out there thinking of putting their home on the market right now that you brought up is, get somebody in the door right away. If you're a year out, make that call, but especially if you want to take advantage of this year. And if you're a seller, I would highly, highly recommend to take advantage of this market. I mean, we're dealing with inventory that, like I mentioned, is at a historic low.
I think I heard a 13-year low. Did you look that up?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, just over last year, inventory in the Twin Cities is down at 20.6%.
Yeah.
So
That's not insignificant.
no, it's not. And I want to get into these some of these stats a little bit later in the show, but we do need to take a commercial break coming up here. So stay tuned. We'll be talking a little bit more about how to deal with multiple offers. If you have any questions, you can always give us a call at 612-207-5388. Again, that's 612-207-5388. And always check us out online. We got some great tools and resources there where you can do the automated analysis. You can pull that up. You can see all the search tools that we have there. A lot of great information at House Geeks. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Twin Cities Real Estate Show with the House Geeks, Kirk Duckwall and Chad Vandelogt. Also in studio is my brother Adam Duckwall and Charles Daly from iLoan, and we're talking about the seller's market that we are in here in April 2016. And yeah, it is a great seller's market, but there's some history behind how we've gotten to this point. From the collapse, going back 7-8 years to where we are now has been a heck of a roller coaster, but it's just going back a couple years to really set us up for the inventory that we're in. And during the commercial break there, Charles, you brought up some really great points.
Well, the history has to do with demographics and weather. There was first the interest rate plummet, or there were buyers' incentives going back as far as 2010, but the interest rate plummet didn't come about until later. Once it did come out, then you had people coming out off of the sidelines, starting to get into the buyer pool. The market was working normally at that point until the winter of 2014 and 2015.
But that was the really, really cold.
Very cold. Minus 30 degrees for 3 weeks in a row.
Ice dams everywhere.
Yep, everywhere. And it also came early and left late. That
was a tough one for putting listings on, honestly.
It basically suspended the market.
Yeah, I mean, I had to we got to wait, here's a snowstorm. Oh, we got to wait, here's another snowstorm. I mean,
and at the very same time that happened, household formation in the millennial generation spiked. Now, a lot of people argue over the specific ages, but call it 33 years and younger. That demographic, which had not been participating in housing, all of a sudden started participating. And in fact, last year, for the first time ever, was larger than the baby boomer demographic was in the home purchase market, which is very, very significant statistically. Now, you have those two things happen at the same time. A large pool of buyers coming off the sidelines into a market that had been suspended for 6 months. You had a statistical setup for a real imbalance. A lot of buyers, not a lot of houses to sell. A seller's market has actually been going on ever since then. And what happened in the spring of 2015 is people would start out looking for the perfect 10, the one, capital T, capital O, their version of the Taj Mahal.
And inventory was sliding.
It was getting worse and worse and worse. And as people were in the market longer and longer and longer, they would come down from a 10 to a 9. Maybe they'd settle for an 8, something like that. But a lot of those people who would even settle for an 8, they weren't able to buy in the spring of 2015. No, they rolled over to the fall. Meanwhile, the people who would have cropped up organically at that same time, they add to that buyer pool. And they can't find anything. So what happens? They roll to the spring of 2016. So you have this layered event happening where you have several different markets that are actually piling up on top of each other, creating this giant pool of buyers in a statistically unsustainable way, because there just aren't enough houses on the market for them.
And I think, one of the other big driving factors, and I'm sure Chad and Adam, you can back me up on this, is how many times this year have you said, or have you heard, the rental rates are just getting ridiculous? They're so high, I can buy a house for less than it's renting for.
We crossed that line a while ago, honestly, and there's a couple ways of looking at that too. And Charles, you can certainly jump in, but people often and too often look at what is my cost of rent versus what is the cost of purchase on a mortgage. Dollars out either way, rent versus mortgage. And they look at that number and they go, okay, well, when I cross that line where I'm paying more for rent, then I don't feel good about it and I should consider selling. But there's another deeper layer to this, which would be what we would call the true cost of home ownership versus the true cost of rent. And that factors in things like tax benefits, appreciation, which of course you can't always count on appreciation, but if you look at it historically and conservatively,
what is it, 4.5 or something?
4.44%.
Right, and so
average,
even if you factor in 1 or 2%, you take a very conservative approach to that, and then you look at your principal reduction that you get. Keep in mind with a mortgage, the longer you have that mortgage, the more you're paying down what you actually owe, and so when it comes time to sell, you have equity. Now, if you look at the true cost of rent, which is your rent, versus
now don't forget that certificate of rent paid.
Right, because that's a big deal. And you look at the true cost of rent versus the true cost of home ownership, which is taking into account those benefits, and suddenly, hundreds of dollars discrepancy is what gets factored into that. So actually, you cross that line much sooner than you think. Renting is not a great deal for most people, certainly not now. We crossed the dollar for dollar line, 2 or 3 years ago.
Years back. Yeah. One thing that I've also noticed, and I think Charles, we were discussing this last fall, is that another pool of buyers that's out there is the people that had the short sales in 2008,
Correct.
2009, 2010, and even foreclosures.
The boomerang buyers.
Right.
The ones who have major credit events that are now credit eligible.
I'm doing a showing with one of those tonight.
Yep.
Yeah, they are a factor. It was a huge portion of the market. What were we at? I think at 2009, the foreclosure total number of foreclosures on the market was 40, 50% or more.
I think we got up to we got up to around 40%, maybe 38% of the Twin Cities market was upside down in their home value. And you think about anybody.
I'm just talking about total inventory, wasn't it? It's something like that.
Total number of sales, perhaps, because those properties factored in and were a huge component of what was actually going on.
Particularly for investors, but this is more of a traditional seller market.
Right.
So the investors have mostly pulled out, and so a lot of the REO properties are no longer on the market, but so too are a lot of the investors not in the market. It's probably more related to the other demographics. The boomerang buyers is a great point, Kirk. Those, along with the tail end of Generation X and the millennials coming in and being such a statistically significant part of the buyer pool, the backlog due to the weather, it's a perfect storm. And it's miserable, and I'm aging very quickly writing loans for these people.
Well, just out of somebody who was in that position, what are kind of the parameters for them to be able to circle around and make a purchase now?
You mean the which ones? Which demographic?
If you're going to become FHA
sale
eligible after a short sale.
And I gave you just about a minute to
Well,
do this?
FHA is 3 years, VA is 2 years, and conventional's 4 years. And there are some exceptions for extenuating circumstances, which can shorten that to 2 years. They're rare, but they can happen. But yeah, credit guidelines have actually loosened with respect to short sales, not so much foreclosures.
What were you saying? Do you have an idea of how many are, what the percentage of the market is that are that boomerang buyer?
Not currently, no.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take a commercial break here. Get back with some more of the stats. I know you guys are so excited.
We're going to talk about winning in multiples.
Yes. Winning in multiple offers as a seller, it's a very important thing to keep in mind as, you want to make sure you're setting yourself up for success with that buyer that you're going to accept ultimately. All right, you are listening to the Twin Cities Real Estate Show with the House Geeks. You can check us out online anytime at www.housegeeks.com. Again, that's www.housegeeks.com, where there's all sorts of great tools if you're looking at buying or selling. Or you can give us a call anytime, 612-207-5388. Thank you for tuning in to the Twin Cities Real Estate Show on AM 950 with the House Geeks. Today we've been talking about how it's a seller's market. I've given some stats about what the market's doing that's driving that. If you have any more questions on this topic, you can always give us a call, 612-207-5388. Again, 612-207-5388. Or you can check us out online at housegeeks.com. Again, that's housegeeks.com. And if you're curious about what your home is worth right now in this market, we have a great little tool that you can click on there to pull up that value, and all sorts of other great neighborhood stats, home valuation tracking tools if you just want to watch what your home is worth over a period of time. Check us out. We've spent a lot of time putting together some really valuable information there, and that's at housegeeks.com. Okay, winning in multiple offers, or I shouldn't even say that. As a seller, that winning bid that you're going to take, and what offer do you want to take, because this multiple offer situation is coming up constantly. As you mentioned, Chad, you wrote 2 offers last night, or 3 offers last night, and 2 of them were already in multiples. So, it's a market driven by multiple offers right now. So I'm going to kind of let you run with this, Adam. As what has your experience been with the multiple offer scenario on the seller side and buyer side?
Sure. Well, I mean, certainly, from the buyer side, which, of course, we're always thinking about, what's a good market, what's a bad market, and we always look at the seller's perspective. Buyers are having a tough time out there because of this exact topic, the multiple offer topic, and so it's really challenging to actually win a property. The number one thing you want to deal with or do regarding multiple offers is try to avoid it, and you avoid it by getting in there faster than somebody else. Okay, so number one, as a buyer, and you've got to use great technology. Okay, this is I love Zillow. I use Zillow all the time. Probably everyone who's listening to this show has used or continues to use Zillow. Awesome site, awesome research site. Terrible, terrible, terrible place to actually find your property because you're not going to find out about it fast enough, and it's not going to be up to date. So you got to have better tools than that, and that's something feel free to call us. We can hook you up with those better tools. But
or go to the House Geeks. You can access them right there.
Absolutely. So you got to know what is actually available, because a lot of these properties that you're seeing out there are actually sold contingent upon inspection or some other contingency. They're some form of sold essentially, or they're pending, and they're showing up as active on all kinds of different sites. So while you're sitting there looking around, wasting your time looking at properties that you're getting excited about and researching, they're already sold, and you should be focusing on the ones that are actually available. So that that would be number one, is get the right technology. Okay, and then once you see a property that you're excited about, go see it. When the thing pops up. And I don't
mean tomorrow.
Yeah,
or
Chad,
3 days from now.
Chad, are you bothered when somebody contacts you and says, "I want to see a property right now"?
Absolutely not. In this market, you have to get out right away. I think the last 4 offers we wrote in the first 2 days. Of those last 4 offers, 3 of them were in multiple offers. You hit on something really key, Adam. You need to have the most accurate and up-to-date information. We already said that the first showing happens online. You need to filter out all the ones that are not a possibility. Get out there right in those first couple days and be ready to pull the trigger. You need
Absolutely.
an agent that can point out all the good, all the bad about the property, so you can feel confident in that decision and pull the trigger quickly, because in those first 2 days, the good ones are more than likely going to be under some form of contract.
Yep, absolutely. And you know what happens if you look at the progression of when somebody starts to look for properties. Of course, it's an exciting time. You're either thinking about buying your first house or you're buying another one. You think about all the possibilities. You get excited. Okay, there's 15,000 properties. Well, I don't know how many properties are in the Twin Cities market right now, but somewhere in that range.
Just about 12,000.
12,000. Okay, so you got 12,000 properties. Well, you start, if you're using the right tools and technology, you start filtering this down. You take out the cities, the neighborhoods, the places you don't want to be. You start focusing on where you do want to be. You focus in on your price range, your property type, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, garage styles, above grade, below grade square feet you actually need. You start funneling this down and you realize, wait a second, there's only about 20 properties out there that actually meet my needs. And some of them have been sitting out there for 200 days. Well, those ones are probably priced wrong, right? If they're sitting out there for a long time, there's something going on with those. And then you see these other ones that are popping on and then they're gone instantly. Those are the ones that you're talking about, Chad. They come on, they sell in the first day or two. So when you see a property come on the market, don't think, let's go check that out this weekend when we have time. That's the worst time to do it.
You need to go over the lunch hour.
If it lists on Monday morning, you're there by Monday at 11 o'clock. Okay, don't ever think that you're bothering us by asking to see a property. We love short notice. That's what we thrive on. That's how you get in. That's how you win your property. That's how you avoid multiple offers.
And assuming that you're able to win that property, that waiting from Tuesday to Saturday to see it, it's perfectly fine. It's just going to come at a cost of, $10,000, something like that, after it gets bid up by somebody else.
Right. So, okay. So, obviously, I think we beat this one dead. You need to get into the property right away. You need to be using great tools. So, Chad, you call up the listing agent. Your client just called you. The property just listed. You find out, it's already got an offer on it, or they're expecting a couple offers this evening. Agents have said that they're writing offers. You're going there with your client. What are you going to do differently to help your client win that property?
So we're going to go to the property. First of all, we want to see if the client likes the property. If the client likes the property, we take a really close look at any issues that the property might have. Hopefully there aren't any, but we take a very close look at that. After that, if they do like it, the property's in good shape, we want to figure out what the property is actually worth.
Absolutely. And this is where your bargain basement agent, no offense, but your bargain basement agent versus somebody who's out there busting their tail, really knows what they're doing and knows how to analyze property. You need somebody who's analytical.
And from the seller's end, this is something that, when we're listing the home, we're trying to figure out these issues ahead of time so they don't come up when you're walking through the house.
And from the bleacher seats, it's best, when you're talking about the cut rate realtor or something like that, you really want to be working with somebody who's not only engaged in the game doing a bunch of transaction, but is also experiencing both sides of it. You'll see some people who are purely listing agents, purely buyer's agents. If you have somebody who's ambidextrous and they can actually look at that transaction through the eyes of the seller, through the eyes of the buyer at the same time, that's the person who's going to be able to ascribe the value and figure out the correct approach to negotiating that particular property.
Right. Now, if you're an agent, or excuse me, if you're a buyer who's sitting out there going, well, you know what, I don't need a buyer's agent. I got Zillow. I can use the Zestimate as, my negotiation tool. Then, what I would say is have a conversation with a good agent. And if you still think that, then best of luck to you.
At the end of the day,
honestly, best of luck to you because, we can't help you. If that's how you approach it, you're going to be flat wrong. You need buyer representation every single time. You always need it. Well, and it's, the agent, a good agent, here's what you should be able to do when, picking up from where you were at there, Chad, when you're in the property, you're out there with measuring equipment. You're figuring out exactly how many above grade, below grade, finished square feet there are. You're able to take that back, analyze the property from, what is it worth today? What is it potentially worth? And you know what? You can walk in with any agent and they can have a gut reaction. I have a gut reaction when I walk into a property, and you know what it's worth? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Your gut reaction on what if it's a good property and identifying issues and things like that, that's worth a lot if you're a skilled agent. But in terms of what is it actually worth on a monetary basis is something that can only be done through a very skilled and diligent market analysis. And from that point, you can determine what your average of adjusted comparable sales is, adjusting for all the discrepancies between the various properties. You're able to figure out what is the high-end comparable. Where is this property going to break down in appraisal? You want to be able to anticipate the entire transaction process through that market analysis. Now, only somebody who's really skilled can you do that. And honestly, I have real issues with dual agency. And is a listing agent going to provide that to you? No, they probably aren't. And I truly believe a good buyer's agent, if they're doing all the right things, probably understands the value of that property better than the listing agent, better than the seller, better than the buyer, better than every other buyer who's involved in this multiple offer situation, so that when you go in and you're making decisions about how much you're going to pay, you're doing it with confidence and you're doing it with knowledge.
Excellent point, Adam. I think it's important to point out that the list price of the house is not necessarily the value of the house.
Exactly.
And there's not always negotiation room on every property. We're actually seeing a lot of these really nice and well-priced properties sell for more than list price. And that's where the skilled buyer's agent comes in, because he can find those properties, or she can find those properties that are underpriced and write you a strong enough offer to get in the game while still protecting the biggest investment that most people make in their life.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up. And, there's a fundamental transition that happens when you go from just you negotiating with the seller, one offer against the seller, one buyer against the seller, versus a buyer who is now in a multiple offer situation. There's a transition from negotiation based off list price. For example, you have a $200,000 house, you come in, you offer $190,000, you find a midpoint, yada, yada. That's negotiation based off list price. As soon as you go into multiple offers, it becomes a negotiation based off value. And that's when you're really glad that you have a skilled buyer's agent with you, because that buyer's agent might say, well, the value is actually only $180,000. So what would you like to pay? Do you want to get caught up in this multiple offer nonsense? Or, where do we stand here? Or the inverse would be the property was mislisted. The agent wasn't at all from the area, had no idea what was going on, which, by the way, an agent being from that area is not your litmus test for whether they should list your property. Absolutely not. The transition is now to negotiation based off value, and understanding the value is critical.
When we come back, we'll be talking about, as the listing agent, what offer do you want to choose? You're listening here to the Twin Cities Real Estate Show with the House Geeks. Check us out online with all the great tools at housegeeks.com. Again, that's housegeeks.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Twin Cities Real Estate Show with the House Geeks. In studio with us also is Adam Duckwall with Bricks Real Estate and Charles Daly with iLoan. We've been talking about the seller's market, multiple offers, how to set yourself up as a buyer in a multiple offer scenario. And now I want to talk a little bit about how to set yourself up as a seller in multiple offers. And it's not always just about price. There's a lot to consider in an inclining market right now. You know, appraisal value is really important out there. And if multiple offers get too crazy, you might be setting yourself up for failure as a seller. And what I mean by that is you accept the highest dollar amount with maybe the lowest down payment. And then if it blows appraisal, then we have to either adjust down or cancel out the offer. And if I remember correctly, Charles, help me out here, if it's an FHA appraisal that gets blown, there's some greater consequences if we have to relist it or, another appraisal to try to get that done.
You can't do another appraisal because the first appraisal for FHA is going to stay with that property for 4 months. Now, that doesn't apply to conventional buyers or VA buyers, but any subsequent buyer that would come in to make an offer with FHA financing on that property would be beholden to the original FHA appraisal.
And the thing a good listing agent is going to do is when they establish your sale price, they're going to establish a price that the home can appraise at, or at least darn close, because if they don't and it just blows it out of the water and you see these offers come in that, you may just jump the gun and accept an offer that the appraisal is not going to work on. And so taking that one that has the good financing, Adam, it looks like you got something to say on this.
Oh, yeah.
Of course you
I've got
do.
a lot to say.
Yeah.
What I was going to mention, just jumping on the point that you got there, Kirk, when you're a listing agent, you're looking at these offers, they come in, a purchase agreement, and this is one of the areas where a buyer who doesn't understand the power of skilled representation completely fails.
By exposing themselves.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Here's one of my favorite ones. Okay. If you're a licensed attorney, you absolutely have the right to write that contract for yourself. In fact, anyone can write a contract for themselves, right? But often a buyer will say, well, I'm an attorney, and therefore I should just write my own contract. Mistake, right?
I'm happy for those. Wait, Adam, real quick. I'm happy for those attorneys out there that think that, but I will give you the name and number for an attorney that will tell you completely otherwise.
My point exactly. I've worked with many attorneys, and all the good ones understand what they know, and more importantly, what they don't know, and what they don't know, they don't know. So those, just because you have the skill set to be able to write a contract does not mean that you are a skilled real estate agent and know the best practices of negotiation and offer presentation, analysis,
just because
all
you're
these
a
other
dentist,
things.
you can't perform brain surgery.
Right. So what you got to do when you're writing an offer, keep in mind a purchase agreement is a short story. And if you remember back to 7th grade English, every word in a short story counts. You don't name something without having that have meaning. Same is true in a purchase agreement. So when you start changing the contract, when you start checking boxes that really aren't customarily checked, when you start, there's so many moving gears in a purchase agreement, and it's very easy to start making, showing, like as you said, Charles, exposing yourself as somebody who isn't versed in what they're doing. If you do that, and this is a mistake that a novice agent will make, that an attorney will make, your offer is going to have a very low chance of getting accepted, especially in multiple offers. So as a listing agent, and Chad, I'm going to have you speak to this too, because you recently sold a property in multiple offers.
Because it portends to the seller that it's going to be a difficult transaction.
Absolutely. When I'm looking at a number of different offers, I'm judging the skill level of that agent, because that speaks directly to the chances that money is going to show up to the seller on the day of closing. When it's an inexperienced agent, the chances go down. I'm going to look very carefully at who that lender is. Okay, if there's a stagecoach, I'm concerned. Okay, not to name any names. Okay, but you definitely know the pitfalls of using different lenders because they use different service providers that don't necessarily do a good job. So you want to understand that whole process. Keep in mind that a listing agent is the marshal of a transaction, and they are going to be making sure that everything is working out smoothly, and they have to anticipate the pitfalls of selecting any particular offer. Tell us a little bit about your experience without giving us any real specifics. Don't want to upset any losing buyers here.
So basically, when I'm a listing agent and representing a client, I have two things in mind: maximizing the dollar amount of the transaction and making the transaction go as smoothly as possible. Both of those things are important. It's not just about the dollar amount on the offer, because oftentimes people that are selling a house are also moving to a place and purchasing a house.
So they need to close.
Oftentimes they need the proceeds from the sale of their house in order to buy their next house. So we want those things to be choreographed perfectly.
Absolutely.
In order to make both of those transactions happen. And Adam was saying, what Adam said is exactly the way that I look at my offers. I look at their story. How are they putting this together? Each individual component counts, and you can tell when there's a skilled buyer's agent putting together a purchase agreement with a well-thought-out price who has chosen a professional lender with an accurate and up-to-date pre-approval letter, realistic close dates. You know that transaction probably has a strong likelihood of making it to the closing and running smoothly. Now, going back to what we talked about earlier about putting the first showing happening online, when everything comes together and you look at every little component, things can go together very smoothly.
All right. So if you are a seller out there and even remotely thinking about putting your house on the market this year, please feel free to give us a call. We're happy to help answer any questions that you have. You can give us a call at 612-207-5388. Again, 612-207-5388. And it's a great market out there right now with that listing inventory at just an all-time low. If you get your house out there, you're probably going to sell it very, very quickly.
And it's not all doom and gloom for the buyers. We're still at historically low interest rates right now, so buyers have excellent buying power.
You can always find out more.
Thank you, Chad.
Yeah, check us out online. Great tools at housegeeks.com. Again, that's housegeeks.com. You can catch us here every week. Tune back into AM 950 with the Twin Cities Real Estate Show and the House Geeks. We'll see you next week.